Welcome to the Living Medicine Podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show. Welcome to Living Medicine's interview with Dick Schwartz, the creator of Internal Family Systems, talking about unusual experiences in altered states.
I'm Dr. Sandra Newis, and I have the privilege of being here with Dr. Dick Schwartz. And I want to I'll give you a little bit of a brief intro, but I doubt that it needs much. I think that, in my opinion, Dick, this is in all sincerity, I think you're one of the most influential people in the mental health field right now. And I am deeply appreciative of how much your influence has really changed the way not only practitioners work, but also the way people really think about themselves, and how, your model just really depathologizes a lot of things that I think people have really struggled with. So I'll do the more formal intro. So I have the privilege of being here with Dr. Dick Schwartz, who's the creator of Internal Family Systems, which, again, I think most of us know is a highly effective therapeutic model that depathologizes the multi-part personality, really focusing on parts. Some people may not be aware that it's actually evidence-based, which is amazing because that really gives us a very solid platform, both for the confidence in the work, but also something to really withstand scrutiny and to really expand in doing that. So I'm really excited about that. The IFS Institute offers training for professionals and the general public. Dr. Schwartz is currently on the faculty for Harvard Medical School and has published 5 books, including No Bad Parts, Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model. I personally know multiple people who've worked with No Bad Parts, and as have I recommend it to clients. And I think that's been a really big influence. So Dick lived with his wife, Jean, near Chicago, close to his daughters and his growing number of grandchildren. And he just told me that he just got back from a long extended period on the road. So doing training and spending time in the Caribbean and Hawaii. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's great to be with you, Sandy, and I'm honored by your interest and your words about me. So thank you.
Thanks. Just to kind of fill in people, this meeting really came to be. We were introduced by Dr. Ron Siegel, who I did an interview with and have had the pleasure to spend time with at conferences and also in Costa Rica, because we began speaking about what he referred to as, quote, somewhat atypical linguistic phenomena, and different atypical phenomena. Atypical meaning that it's not kind of the phenomena that we necessarily see in regular therapy sessions, was found within psychedelic work. I have experienced some of that myself. I've seen it in clients. We see it in trainees in our training program. And I'm both fascinated by it and also am quite concerned that we need to understand more about this and have some tools to work with it. And Ron suggested that you are a person who shares that interest and also perhaps even that concern. So that brought us together.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm happy to talk about that and other things.
Great. Good. So, one of the places that I would love to start, I know lots of people and there's lots of information about IFS out there online. And you've done many talks on that, and I looked up the YouTube. And so if you would like to, first I wanted to say, if you'd like to kind of just give a brief introduction, just so that people have the frame who might be less familiar.
Yeah, happy to do that. So basic idea is that we're all multiple personalities, and I don't mean we all have multiple personality disorder, but the people who get that diagnosis aren't really different from the rest of us, except that because of the horrific trauma they suffered as children, they're what I call parts, but are called alters in the MPD world, got blown apart more. So they don't communicate much. There are these amnesic blocks between them. But the phenomena of having multiple inner people, really, what other systems call subpersonalities, from my point of view, and this is after 40 years of researching this whole inner world, is normal. It's the way we're meant to be. We're meant to have many different minds trying to help us in our lives with different talents and different resources for us. And if they never got traumatized or didn't pick up what we call burdens from the culture or from our ancestors or from traumas that happened to us, they would always be in their naturally valuable states, and they would just be helping us in different ways as we go through our lives. And some of them are, some of them haven't been burdened that way. And there's lots and lots of them. And that trauma and what's called attachment injuries or bad parenting or that some of these parts just didn't fit into your family. All of that combines to take them out of their naturally valuable states into roles that can be quite extreme and sometimes damaging, and freezes them in time, so that often, if you were to ask one of these parts how old it thought you were, you'd get a single digit, because it's living back when it took on this new role, when it shifted out of its naturally valuable state into this protective role or whatever it's in. And it still thinks you're 9 years old and it has to protect you the way it did when you were 9 years old. And it carries what we're going to call burdens, the definition of which are extreme beliefs and emotions that came into your system from those experiences and attach to these parts and then drive the way they operate, like a virus. And so that's the way I see the mind. And as I come from family therapy and steeped in systems thinking, so as I was encountering this inner system in clients, I started to try and track the distinctions and sequences to try and map out this world of parts. And the map that came then and is held up over these 40 years was between parts that, as I was saying, are before they were hurt, were these delightful inner children that were playful and loving and creative and joyful and so on. But once they do get hurt or terrified or shamed, now they carry the burden of terror or worthlessness or emotional pain, because they're the most sensitive parts of us. And then once they get hurt like that, we don't want to be around them because they can overwhelm us and pull us back into those scenes and make us feel terrible. And so we have a natural impulse to lock them away in inner basements or abysses. And everybody around us tells us to do that because this is a rugged individualist culture. So
you must be strong. You must be productive. You must work hard.
Exactly. And you're supposed to just move on from trauma and don't look back and don't carry those memories anymore. Just move on. And that would be fine if you were just moving on from memories. But unbeknownst to you, you're locking away the parts of you that were hurt the most or scared the most or shamed the most. And not only is that bad for those parts, but you no longer have access to those lovely qualities that they carry. So you become less of a person, and they are suffering constantly in this exile. So we call them exiles. And when you have a lot of exiles, you feel more delicate. The world seems more dangerous because so many things could trigger them. And if they get triggered, it's like a big explosion of flames of emotion are going to consume you and pull you down. So other parts are forced out of their naturally valuable states to become protectors. One class of which we call managers, because they're trying to manage your life so that your exiles don't get triggered, so they stay contained. And some of them are managing your relationships so no one gets close enough to hurt you again, managing your appearance so that everybody likes you and doesn't reject you, manage your performance so you get accolades to counter the worthlessness. Some of them are the inner critics that are yelling at you constantly with the goal of getting you to do these things. But they don't know what to do with you but to scream at you, or they're trying to tear down your confidence so you don't take any risks and protect you that way. So
Yeah.
there's a whole series of manager roles. And again, that's not who the parts are. That's the role. Just like kids in a family, functional family are forced out of their natural states to be in these roles in the family. It's the same process.
Right.
And so those would be otherwise known as the defenses. And events will break through those defenses and trigger your exiles, no matter how strong your managers are. That's a big emergency because other parts of you feel like you're going to die. So there's another set of protectors standing guard and go into action immediately to deal with this emergency. And douse the flames of emotion with some substance, or get you higher than the flames until they burn themselves out, or will get you distracted until they burn themselves out. So these we call firefighter protectors. And they're in contrast to the managers who are in control, trying to stay in control and please people. Firefighters take you out of control and piss off everybody. A lot of them do, not all of them.
Yes.
And they tend to be impulsive. And I don't care about the consequences to your body, to your relationships. I just got to get you out of here.
Right.
Before you burn up from these emotions. So that's the map. It's pretty simple. Just big distinction between protectors and exiles. And the two kinds of protectors, managers and firefighters. And just to complete, as I was mucking around with all this and tried to, as a family therapist, I'm trying to get this inner system to get along, as I got hip to the fact that these parts aren't what they seem and they're actually deserve to be listened to. So I'd be trying to have maybe you listen to your critic rather than attack it. And it's going okay, but suddenly you're furious with the critic. And it reminded me of family sessions where working with two family members, and suddenly a third one jumps in and is screwing everything up. And as family therapists, we learn to ask that person to just stay out of it and step out and go back to the dyad with better boundaries. And things work out when you do that. And so it reminded me, as I'm working with you and your critic, maybe some other part jumped in who hates the critic who's talking. So I might ask you to get that one to step out, get another one to step out. And as I did that, it was like this other person would pop out who had all these great, what we call C-word qualities, knew how to relate to the critic in a way that was helpful and was calm and was confident relative to the critic, was even had compassion for it, was curious about it, all these C-word qualities. And when I would ask people, what part of you is that? Because that's great, let's keep that around. They'd say, that's not a part like these others. That's me, or that's myself.
Like your authentic self.
Yeah, so I came to call that the self with a capital S. Now, 40 years later, thousands of people using this all over the world, we can safely say that that self is in everybody, can't be damaged, and knows how to heal, and is just beneath the surface of these parts, such that when they open space, it pops out spontaneously. And relating all this to psychedelics, for some reason, psychedelics have the effect of putting your managers to sleep or offline, which releases a huge amount of self. That's a big invitation to all these exiled parts to get attention.
Yeah.
So there's healing possible.
That's so interesting, because there's so many different elements there. There's psychodynamic elements. There's, like you said, there's family therapy elements. As you mentioned with psychedelics, one of the things that we see, and I think Michael Mithofer even maybe did a study on this. I was talking to him about it, and just that they, for whatever reason, even if you're not IFS trained, and I am informally IFS trained, I've read the books, I've watched your videos, I've been to some workshops, that just comes out. Like the parts language just emerges, and I don't do it. And amongst our training program, we see that over and over again. And so, that to me, of all the things I've ever experienced, lends credence to this. Like, this wants to happen. This naturally just does happen.
Yeah, I don't know how many years ago it was, but when I first got interested in psychedelics and IFS, he called me up because he's a well-trained IFS therapist, as is his wife Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, as they were doing the MAPS research, especially with the high dose MDMA, they kept track of how often that would happen. Not only would people start talking the language, but they would start working with their parts, basically
Mm-hmm.
start doing IFS on their own without any cueing from the facilitator. And it was 80%. And that
80.
just,
I mean, that's really consistent with what I see. And I think if you prompt it, you get a little bit more.
yeah,
And, it's given me a lot of both interest in learning more, but also confidence that this is a naturally emerging phenomena. And so this is part of human nature, which is one of the things I think is so interesting
that's
about
what,
this work.
it was very validating to me because it felt like I had just stumbled onto something that people know how to do spontaneously on their own.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of brings back to the psychedelics piece is that, we have a mental health epidemic and people are flocking to psychedelics, hoping that it'll be the panacea, which I, continually say, like, it is not. Like, it requires a lot of training, it requires a lot of handle with care. And kind of want to move into some of those directions as well, that just, kind of leading to some of the spiritual components and, some of the things that people can see with this. And I'm just wondering, to back up a little bit, if you could just, you said in an earlier conversation that we had that really there actually are some spiritual underpinnings. And some of your work talks about like the big self and how that parallels to higher self. And I just wonder if you can speak to that part as just kind of a frame.
Yeah. So when I first encountered self, the way I described it, I named four of the C's, but there are four others, which include courage, creativity, clarity, and connectedness.
Mm.
So those are the eight C words that we use to describe the qualities of self. Um, I was amazed because I was working with a population of clients that had no business showing any of those qualities based on their histories
Mm.
or based on attachment theory, which I had studied in graduate school, which says to have any of that inside of you, you needed to have gotten it from a relationship.
Mm.
It's not inherent in you. And I was working with clients who had horrible, horrible, torturous childhoods. You couldn't account for this being there based on attachment theory.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, there are many things I love about attachment theory, but that one piece is just wrong.
So you're saying that attachment theory implies that one can't develop attachment, and therefore, since the eight C's are so much about connection to self and others, that one might speculate that that wouldn't exist if somebody has a whole bunch of disrupted attachment. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that attachment theory basically posits that you get those qualities from relationships.
Mm,
It's
mm-hmm,
not inherent in us.
mm,
And so if you don't get them from a parent, then you got to get them from a therapist or you get them from a spouse or some intimate relationship. And here I was finding this in people who've been, like I said, tortured every day. So I couldn't square that with psychological theories at all. I searched.
mm,
And it wasn't until some of my students started saying, well, what you're talking about sounds like what I've been studying in Hinduism or studying in Buddhism. Or it turned out that all of the world's spiritual traditions know about this, and almost no psychologies know about it. And they have words for it. And so I actually co-authored a book on that topic with a guy named Bob Falconer called Many Minds Oneself. And
mm,
because I came into this a very a-spiritual person or even
mm,
anti-spiritual, but that was the beginning of a shift toward a much more spiritual understanding of all of this. And so, yeah, at this point, for me, what I'm calling self is a drop of that big ocean of the big self or God
Mm-hmm.
or whatever you want to call that, the non-dual.
Mm-hmm.
And that, or I love the quantum physics. Photons are both a particle and a wave. So
Mm.
there's a wave state of self where you don't have boundaries and you just feel this kind of blissful oneness. And you can access that through psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer connected to your individuality, to your body at all. And then as you come back, you begin to particleize and you come back into your body and you feel these boundaries and you feel separate from others. But it's the same self. It's a drop of that ocean, just in a different form. That's where I stand with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very helpful to know that. It's very helpful to know that at that much higher level, you are connected to everything else. And that what we call death is just a transition to that,
Mm.
so on. And so that's for me one value of psychedelics is
Mm.
driving that home. Like before I did that, ketamine in particular, I kind of thought that death wasn't so bad and it's just a transition. But after having done it a few times, I know that that's where we're headed and that it's all okay. And that's why psychedelics are so useful for end of life people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's very much a parallel to my own personal experience as well as what we see in with our clients and in our training program. And, I want to get to that in a minute or maybe now, but want to just kind of ping that if this feels like the right way. But we are starting to actually have concerns, not that we shouldn't be looking for that, but that as practitioners, we need to be really careful about that as this like endless searching for this like ever deeper spiritual phenomena is really maybe one of the pathways to addiction. That we are so seeking this connection to higher self, which is what a lot of earth medicine and ancestral medicine study would say, that we are so disconnected that we are desperately seeking. So then we get psychedelics that take us to this, oh my gosh, here it is. So therefore I need to keep doing.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, do you know, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, people call that a spiritual bypass. And
Mm-hmm.
you see it not just in psychedelics, but in all spiritualities, that you can access that bliss state. And many gurus and seekers advocate that, that's the goal, is to get more and more awakened, quote unquote, that way, and to live in those places as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And all that would be fine if not for the fact that in doing that, you're abandoning these exiled parts that be hurting and needing your attention.
Right.
And that's the addictive part of it, is that just like getting high on drugs, you get higher than the pain. And
Mm-hmm.
same with spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it's like, to me, that's only one aspect, like there's a, it's a poster. I mean, it's like a Buddhist meme, but one of the quote things is, carry wood, like chop wood, carry water, like enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And that strikes me that that's kind of that. Like, yes, we have these moments and it might illuminate what we could be striving for.
Yeah.
But, are we really like, is that really enlightenment? Right? Or is that a window into what can be that we should continue to work towards helping our nervous system get towards and work with our exiles to be able to access that more fully in the day to day?
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, one of the values, I think, of psychedelics is that you get there, you feel it, and then you bring it back. You bring back that kind of what we call self-energy that you can access when you get that non-dual, and you bring it back to your parts. And when you come back with that much self, that just by itself relaxes everybody, and you can do a huge amount of healing.
That's such a lovely way to say that, when you come back with that much self and then everything relaxes, because that's very much a parallel to my experience one of the things I've gotten from my own spiritual study is this, the phrase expansion and contraction. So I teach clients like, you go to these places and you expand, and then nature pours a vacuum. So you're going to want to contract, right? Like, the protectors might come back online.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of ground ourselves in the expansion, recognizing that real life has a degree of real life. And
Yeah, and that's one of the dangers because although it hasn't happened nearly as much as I expected, there is what we call protector backlash. So what we learned the hard way without psychedelics is the importance of working with protectors to get permission to go to these vulnerable exile places that they've been trying to keep you away from for decades. So we learned all the protector fears, and we learned how to address those fears and how to get permission. And psychedelics can very spontaneously take people to those places.
Yeah.
Because it does put the protectors to sleep. Now, I expected a lot more backlash from that. My thinking about why sometimes people don't have that experience is because when you access that much self, as I said earlier, the parts just get calmer about, okay, there is this big, strong person in us who can handle all this stuff. We don't have to punish them for going to these vulnerable places because they can handle it. And some people still do, but we've learned before the medicine is injected to work with any protectors and all their fears about what might happen during the journey or about going on the journey at all, and address those fears. And so our subjects don't go without permission from their protectors. And that seems to make for calmer and deeper journeys.
Can you speak to just a little bit of the how-to on that? One of the things, again, is like, what kind of snippets can we draw from those who, people get stuck like, oh, I'm not IFS certified, so therefore I can't use any of the concepts. And, first of all, do you share that? Like, are you okay with people kind of taking snippets, or is it
Of
like,
course, yeah. No, of course, yeah.
okay. All right. So if you are, then I wonder if you could share some snippets, because that's also a really nice segue into kind of, talking about unattached burdens and guides and things like that, that I know is some of the pieces in your model as well.
Do you want to role play it?
Sure.
Okay, Sandy. So as we contemplate going on this journey, what comes up for you in the way of fear?
I'm afraid of what the other people in the group might think. I'm afraid of what you might think. I'm afraid I might do something weird, or that something unexpected might come out and everybody's going to think I'm strange.
Okay. So it makes sense. And something like that might happen. I can promise you I won't be judging you, and we can check with the rest of the group, and I suspect they'll answer the same way I did. So so how does that protector feel now as I address that fear?
That feels really good. And I wonder if people would be honest. I wonder if you'd be being honest.
Okay. I can promise you I'm being honest. I've had journeys myself, and I did strange things, and so I know it just happens. And so anyway, I would just go on about reassuring that way.
And would you then literally have people say that if it's a group, do you have people say that and then have others kind of quickly respond? Like, do you do that level of process with it?
Well, sure. Yep.
Nice. I love that. I mean, I know when you said it to me, just my nervous system, I just kind of just softened a little bit. Like,
yeah.
And I noticed that you say that with such authenticity that, that's one of the things that we really want to kind of put into the field, is really the importance of really showing up in as authentic a way as you can as a practitioner, because the energy is charged. It's important.
Absolutely. So when we train therapists, a lot of the training is designed to help them access their self when they're doing the therapy, know when their parts are interfering, and help them quickly get out of the way. So there's some markers for when you're in self and when you're not that it's helpful for people to learn.
So for you, a big piece is just getting permission,
Yeah.
like naming it as though it's the most normal thing in the world.
Right.
And then getting permission, having them speak that out loud, you holding that from the place of the 8 C's.
Right. And I'll say to these parts, we're not going to do it if you don't want us to. You're the boss.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to do it until you give full permission.
Well, so one of the things I've always noticed when I've, watched you work or just, the pieces is talking to parts as though they are alive, as though they have separate personalities. I know I've heard you talk in other domains about there really is a difference between DID, but not really, right? Like it's more about the rigidity and the way that settles in. And so what I'm also really interested is this piece about unattached burdens and guides. I've been, looking at Bob Felkener's work as well. Obviously, the two of you have worked together. And the kind of the broad question here is, can you tell us a little bit about that? And where I'd like to eventually land is, how do we differentiate that, both for as practitioners when we see it, and also helping clients or trainees or participants, depending on whatever word we want to use, work with that as well?
So, which of those do you want to start with?
Well, first of all, let's just talk about what they are, right? And then with the idea being like, how is that different than parts?
Okay. So what we call unattached burdens, this goes back many years, and I was working with people with the assumption that there were no bad parts, which is the book I wrote, but I still maintain that, but these are not parts. So, but I would run into one of these and it would just say, I want to hurt the person, I want to kill the person, I want to do damage to other people. And I would say, okay, what are you afraid would happen if you didn't do that? And they would say, I'm not afraid of anything. That's just what I do. I want to destroy her. Okay. And I would just go on and on trying to find the protective intention of the thing futilely. And at some point, I started asking, well, are you a part? And for whatever reason, they don't lie. So they'd say no, or not exactly, some version of that. And I'd say, well, what are you? And they'd say, well, they couldn't really, they're not that smart, a lot of them. So it's hard for them to be totally articulate about it, but they could even say when they came into the client and how they got in and so on. And so now we call them unattached burdens so that it's a little less scary than the word entity, which is what most shamanic traditions call them.
Well, and it's interesting because, like I've, studied and been with various shamanic traditions, but also spiritual traditions. Like, I shared your view about, there are some core elements that are really found in, many, many traditions that go back thousands and thousands of years. And when something is seen in that many domains, it makes sense that one might pay credence to it, right? And so are you saying that it's really the choice of unattached burden is one kind of attached to the fact that you talk about burdens in IFS, but two, like very literally it is the same. You're just trying to shift the language a little bit to make it less scary?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we unburden parts, they literally can tell you what they are. They tell you there's this burning thing in my chest or this weight on my shoulders, and then you take it out and it's this little burning thing. Then send it out of the system.
Yeah.
Well, these are these little burning things that aren't attached to any part. They're just in there floating around. So
I'm curious what your thoughts are about how they got there. Like, is it all trauma related? Like the idea about DID? Is it accidental? Could you be somewhere where they attach to you?
yeah, it's sort of all of those. So when you ask them, they'll basically say, when you were out of your body, they got in. So when yourself was out. So you find them a lot in people who've been abused severely or have a lot of operations or have done a lot of psychedelics. Or, things like that. All those kind of things that take you out of your body, they can't penetrate self energy, so they wait around, and as soon as you're not, then they have an opening. So,
I have heard in some other types of circles like that they feed on stress. That when and that would be if your self, I would, and to use IFS language, if your self is not strong.
that's right.
So if you're caught up in stress, they kind of like grab hold and feed on
Yeah,
that.
if you're blended with certain parts that do take you out of your body a bit, which there are many of those, then they have an opening. Yeah. But the important thing to know is that they have no power if you're not afraid of them. So if I'm working with you and we find one of these and you're terrified of it, it has a lot of power. We get all the scared parts into a waiting room and let you be with it. Suddenly you're saying, no, I'm not afraid of it anymore. And it's trying to hit me, but it has no power now. It can't. And so I'll say, okay, then just let it know it can't stay. It doesn't belong here. We're going to send it to where it'll be transformed. And I would have you just bring in the light to shine on it and just send it out.
So that piece, bring it to the light, that is also found in many spiritual traditions. It's also found in kind of new age philosophy, like, are we, light workers versus battling the light and the dark. And so I'm just curious kind of where that comes from for you. Is that part of your own experience, part of your own belief system?
No, not a bit.
It's super simple. Like you did a demo with me. It was super helpful. And it felt so simple. I was like, oh, we'll just bring it to the light. Like I can do that.
Well, it comes from trial and error, really, because when we first learned about burdens, that in parts carried them, I would say, okay, well, can the part take it out of its body? And they could, and then we didn't know what to do with them because we didn't want to build up some kind of toxic waste dump inside of people. So what should we do with this? And at the time, there was a woman named Michi Rose who was studying shamanism and said in shamanism, they offer the elements. So light, water, fire, wind, earth, anything else. So we started with light, but there were some parts that didn't want to give it up to the light. They wanted something else. So then we offered the other options. And now parts just pick which one they want to do. And then they set up a fire and we put it in the fire and let the fire take it. So everything with this thing has really just been trial and error, sort of. So I'm just following the data, even though it takes me way outside the paradigm.
It certainly is outside of the paradigm. But what's super interesting about that for me is that is directly in the paradigm. I studied with Malidoma Somé, and now I study with Cater Brown, and so does Signy, my business partner, doing rites of passage work and elemental ceremony and ritual. And that whole tradition is about, the use of elementals, the energetics of the elementals to both heal and to transform and to clear, but also to bring in. So, your work, one of the things I value so much about it is you're bridging these gaps in a scientific, methodological, evidence-based way. And it's offering us some really tangible tools to be able to work with what has previously been thought of as just esoteric phenomena.
Totally. And the same thing with what we call guides, that it turns out, what's been very humbling to me is that it's been made very clear to me that this model didn't come out of my little brain. The guides have loaned it to me to bring to the world. And that was a big relief when I learned that. And so as I explored all of that, and again, explored it simply because as I'm working with clients and they do some big unburdenings, they'll start saying something like, I'm hearing this voice and it's telling me these things about me and how I should, how I should think about myself or what I might want to do in my life. And I would have them focus on that as a part. And at some point it would say, no, it's not a part, that it's something else and it's here to help. And sort of the opposite of the UBs. It's here to help not only you, but also humanity. And so as I increasingly ran into that phenomenon, I just got more and more interested and began trading sessions with a woman who channels my guides, which has
Oh, nice.
been incredibly valuable. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've come to really believe that this phenomenon is true as well. And it's ironic that basically ours is the only culture that doesn't know about this or doesn't believe in it.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's like, Christianity would call it Jesus and God or the Holy Spirit or however we're going to call it. And, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but, it's possible that it's all the same thing, like that it's ultimately the same phenomena being understood in different ways. At least I'm certainly open to that. And,
What the guides will say about that is they'll come in the form that you listen to.
mm-hmm.
For Christians, they come as Jesus. For other religions, they come in other forms.
Mm-hmm.
And they just want to be heard.
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned that you kind of almost had a download with this. Would you say that came over many years? Would you say that came kind of one day? Like, I just wonder how much of that you're interested or willing to share.
They've been kind to me. So they gave me one piece at a time in ways that, because I came into this, I come from a hugely scientific family.
Mm.
3 of my brothers and my father were medical scientists. And so I think that's partly why they picked me, because I had this huge skeptical part and I could be more easily believed. And so they would just kind of reveal things to me one piece at a time that I could actually digest. And so it took a while. Yeah.
I mean, that is just so interesting. And I just am deeply honored that you're willing to share about that, because that's so important. Because, like, our culture and psychedelics, one of the things I think is just fascinating about, really, if we're going to call this a cultural movement, which I believe it to be, is that it's being driven by science, and awesome. And it needs to be, and it should. I was trained as a clinical researcher, like how to do psychotherapy outcome researcher, and to be skeptical and to rule out all alternative and rival hypothesis. So I share that as well. Well, also, I call myself both a skeptic and a believer. Like, I'll be open to it, and I'll also question it and still do it every step of the way. And so, here are you in a position of influence, obviously really intelligent and well-trained. And now you're in a position of influence, and the willingness to speak openly about that is a real gift for all of us. Really. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I mean, that wasn't always the case. And because I had ambitions of trying to revolutionize psychiatry and so on, and academia.
Well, but you are. You're doing it.
Not really, not the hardcore at all. So I went grassroots, and I waited until the movement had grown to the point where it couldn't be reversed by coming out about some of these things.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And also, I asked my guides if I should be talking about it, and they said, "Hell yes, you should be talking about it." So I'm nothing if not a slave to my guides. So.
Well, and that's honestly been some of my experience as well, that it's really important for us all to be speaking this language. And really, the linkage between being able to language spiritual phenomena, if we're going to call it that, we can call it shamanic phenomena, we can call it whatever we want. But bridging that with the science may ultimately be really that it's not either or, that it's always been both and your model gives us some language and some tools to be able to work with that, really, no matter what your belief system is. Like, it doesn't really, it gives us an opportunity to not have your belief system matter.
Exactly. And I'm careful to not impose any of this on students, so that you can be an atheist and go to the training and come out knowing very well how to do IFS, and you don't have to believe any of this. So.
Yeah. So for somebody who might, so then I have a question. Sort of, you talked about how we determine, the unattached burdens. Basically, they are truth tellers. They don't seem to have any protective elements, no matter how hard you dig. They really seem to have a destructive force without that protective piece. Um,
Right. Mhm.
and they seem to be responsive to being removed using elemental kind of ritual or elemental language, whether that be light or fire or water or air or mineral.
Well, they're not responsive in the sense that they're kicking and screaming and they're terrified to leave. They don't have a choice about it.
Okay. All
They
right.
do it in a compassionate way.
So we identify them based on those kind of criteria.
Mhm.
And any other criteria that would be helpful for people to kind of, if they're sitting there working with the client, like here's the scenario. They're working with a client. It's either in a training retreat, like the kind that you do, that we do, or they're working with a client, like an actual psychotherapy client, and they see something that they wonder if this is this. The criteria that they might use are,
Um,
like you said, they tell the truth. They don't have a protective
yeah,
element.
start out assuming it's a part and interview it like it's a part.
Mm-hmm.
If it, I would spend hours. The thing would just keep saying, "No, you don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing good about me." And
Mm,
and so, yeah, the danger in talking about it is that people assume certain parts are these things and will try to send them out.
I see. And then they become an exile.
Yeah, and then they'll exile them. And
Uh-huh. Okay. That's really important. I totally get that. Makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah, so you really want to be sure it is one of these things. And the more you do it with them, the more uh, the quicker you can realize that it's not a part.
Okay. And so what I hear there is, to people new to this work, assume it's a part first.
Yeah.
When in doubt, assume it's a part and
Yes.
work with it as if it were a part of maybe a firefighter or something else that had a more destructive type tendency, and work with it in that way first.
That's right.
Mhm. And then how about differentiating guides from parts? Like, how is that a useful distinction? Is it important? Does that naturally emerge for people, for yourself? Has that naturally emerged? Is it something we should be wondering about?
It is useful in the sense that it's useful to know how to call on them and how to listen to them and things like that. So, um, how to distinguish them? Again, I have a T-shirt that says "Just ask."
I
So
love that.
ask them
Nothing
also.
simple.
If you ask them if they're a part, they'll say, "No, not exactly. I'm something else."
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're just always uh, valuable. They're just always helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe what I'm hearing you say at a basic level, then tell me if I've got this right, is basic level again means somebody who's doing psychedelic work that is not fully IFS trained, but is witnessing this phenomenon.
Mhm.
Because really, I think we share the goal of wanting clients, trainees, practitioners, participants of all sorts to not be traumatized by the emergence of these kinds of phenomena, as well as recognizing that with psychedelics, we probably are, that's my experience, opening up more.
Yep.
So it's really important that we hold the space with the 8Cs,
Yes.
right? I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth now. I don't mean
No,
to,
that's
but
right.
I'll just get that out there.
I can't overstate the importance of you, the facilitator, keeping the room full of self energy while people are
Yeah.
in,
Oh, I love that.
and that can be challenging if it's a MDMA trip or a psilocybin trip that's going on for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a certain amount of concentration, and
Mm-hmm.
it's another reason why I prefer
I mean,
ketamine. Yeah.
right. I mean, sometimes I'll do 3 sessions in a row and mostly IV with clients. So I'm in the room for, 6 hours and under the influence with people for 4+. So it certainly involves a lot of really me connecting to myself, right? In order to be able to be in there. And there's a difference. Like, if I'm not, the client has a different experience. If I'm distracted, just
Absolutely.
do.
No, that's totally true. And I don't think there's enough emphasis in the psychedelics world the presence of the facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
And, and not only to protect from these UBs, but just the more self-energy is in the room, the more protectors sense the safety of it, and the more the exiles feel invited.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's interesting because it brings the question then about, ketamine therapy versus CAP, right? Or just doing the medicine in a group versus doing it in a well-held container. I mean, we prioritize the container above the medicine. We prioritize the process, but the medicine is a tool. But there's a prevailing view out there in the world that it's just about the medicine. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that and how that might all relate.
I totally agree. And as much as I like Michael Pollan, he did a big disservice that way, because he really emphasized how the medicine is the healing agent. And it can be, but it's like you said, it's a tool that opens up a lot of things. And it can also cause a lot of damage if people don't know, if they're not in a good setting, or if they don't know what to do. Like, another reason I think the IFS perspective is valuable, because I've heard from people who went to practitioners who, when they had a panic attack, for example, thought it was a panic attack and got scared themselves and tried to pull them out of it and just escalated. And if instead the practitioner thought, oh, here's one of these really scared exiles that's come in, see if it'll separate a little bit so the client can help it. It's a great opportunity to do a big piece of healing. But if you say, oh my God, they're having a panic attack, it's going to go south. So,
no, for sure. I have a client that every single session, I've been working with this person for a while. They started off doing an infusion series, and now they come in about every 4 to 5 weeks for boosters, and we see each other in between. No matter how often we've done it, at some point during the ketamine session, and sometimes it's even at the end, like it's more often at the end now, which is interesting to me, they do have some kind of panic attack. Like, turn it off, I can't handle it, this is horrible. And I've begun to track, like, it's a different voice, it's a different demeanor. And so we're just like, oh, hi, welcome, right? Like, we see you, we witness you, to use your language. We see that you're here. And I wonder if is it okay to continue?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. So, well, just as we're kind of, winding up our time together, just any other really things that you'd like to put out into the field, suggestions for practitioners in particular, things that you've mentioned are the importance of the container, the importance of holding yourself, the importance of assuming it's a part and working with it as such before anything else. You've talked about making sure that you have protection, or that you have permission from the protectors to be able to move forward. Other things that you might really suggest specifically to, like, how can we do great, psychedelic work, but also how can we really be available and we call it stepping into kind of a calm authority when we see something that might be outside of our frame of reference, which we probably are going to.
Definitely you will. And the calm authority is what I call self. One of the C words. And then for the authority, you have confidence and courage. And so if you stay in self, you really won't be intimidated by anything. That's really key, because, as you say, a lot of strange things start to happen.
They do. And the longer you're in it, the more we're going to see it. And people in the underground and people in the sacred plant medicine communities have more training, maybe not, maybe not. And, indigenous cultures have training and perspective on how to deal with this. And, we've got people like, Dr. Jo Tafur and Belinda, I've forgotten her last name, but, she's an indigenous person with Charcuna Institute, have, begun to raise the alarm. Like, we need to be mindful of this. We need to be careful of this. We need to welcome it, but also work with it. And it sounds like you're adding your voice to that as well.
Very much. And the training you need isn't to know all the different possible phenomena that you're going to encounter. And the training is to know how, when something does happen that's unexpected, how
Mhm.
to go to the part of you that gets startled and
Yeah.
help you relax and trust you to stay. And that's a lot of what we train therapists to do.
I love that. Great. Well, anything else that you'd like to share before we finish today?
Let me think. I think we covered pretty well the territory. Uh, I really appreciate your interest in what you're doing and incorporating it. And I'm hoping, as I think you are now, that IFS can be at least one of the several main maps to the psychedelic territory. And uh, we're making progress in that direction. We got collaborations going with maps and other places. So yeah.
I'm on board. So I think it gives us the most tangible, straightforward, non-pathologizing and non-scary way to talk about whatever phenomenon might emerge. And, that emphasis for practitioners and just maintaining their strong self is really important. So I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your time today, and I appreciate your contribution. So, and thank you so much for sharing and on this personal level with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today for this fascinating conversation. Stay tuned for our next episode with Dr. Ron Siegel, Harvard University professor and author of multiple books on mindfulness, for another really great conversation, another mind-bending exploration in the implications of psychedelic work and mental health. See you then. Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.